On the money.
Lisa Leong with you. It is 11 past 10. Death taxes were officially abolished in the 80s, but there's actually a sneaky death tax relating to your superannuation if you're trying to leave your super to your adult child. To help us understand this rather complex area, Noel Whittaker, author of Wills, Deaths and Taxes, joins you. Hello, Noel.
Hi, Lisa. Great to be with you on this Sunday morning.
And let's take some questions, 1300 222 774 or 0437 774 774. Anything we share here is general in nature, doesn't take into account your personal circumstances, financial situations or needs. Noel, let's get cracking. So, Death tax on superannuation, please explain.
Okay. When you retire and get your superannuation, it's a tax-free member benefit, so it's tax-free. So as long as you're alive, your super is tax-free. But your super contains two components. One is taxable, and that's all the earnings and all your deductible contributions and the boss's contributions. There may be a non-taxable, there may not be, where you may have put in $100,000 for Aunt Mary's will or something. But everyone has a taxable component. The taxable component left to a non-dependent is taxed at 17%. So $500,000 super, that's $85,000.
And what's interesting here is non-dependent for superannuation purposes.
Your partner's, even if your partner's millionaire, your partner's always dependent.
Got it. But children. Now there's a way around it. The way around it is to have your attorney withdraw when you're getting close to death. Your attorney is empowered to withdraw all your superannuation tax-free and put that in your bank account. But there's one major problem now is time. Now, a woman emailed me recently. She said, my dad died and all his money was to go to mum to save the death tax. But mum died a week later. And because the company hadn't had notice of his death, because she wasn't living then, the estate got the death tax, because you can't leave super to a dead person. So the timing, was there any way to get around this?
Well, I think you've got to be prepared. I mean, you've got to give yourself 6 months at least with the big funds. Because of the process, you've got to produce a death. You've got to, if you're withdrawing, you need to prove that your attorney document's valid. Now, we had a case recently where this lady was going to a nursing home, and the two kids were her attorneys. They went to the bank to withdraw $500,000 for the bond. Bank said can't do it. The document is not valid because the attorneys signed before mum. Because the document grants power and you can't accept the position until mum's given it. The lawyer said no trouble, the attorneys can re-sign. The bank said no, we won't accept it, and that had to go to court. So please, preparation is critical here.
And this is with all things, and I think the theme of your book, which is very clear, is don't put things off. So, Noel, you've written the book, Wills, Deaths and Taxes, even starting with something which seems simple like the will. If I asked, do you have a will, about 50% of people will say no, and the 50% of people who say yes don't know where it is and it's out of date.
Always, and that's the big problem. And there's another major issue, Lisa, that most people are on the age pension, most people. They tend to leave it to each other. The cut-off point for a couple is just over $1 million. For a single, it's around $680,000. So if Bill's married to Mary and they've got assets of $800,000 and they leave it to each other, then Bill dies and Mary gets $800,000. She's over the threshold and she's lost Bill and the pension and the concession cards. So it's again, it's pre-planning.
So let's get your questions in. 1300 222 774 0437 774 774. Noel Whittaker, author of new book Wills, Death and Taxes. So you can ring up about the death taxes that we spoke about, or also you might have a question about a will. I have one here for you, Noel. It's on the text line. Noel, if you are an executor of a will, will you automatically review an executor's commission?
Commission? I don't quite understand the question. I mean, an executor can be paid, but I think the important thing is that the executor you choose is competent to act. I think that's the important thing, because when I was writing the book, I got so much feedback from people who get my newsletter. It was mostly about the executor was incompetent or lazy or slow. Or we had 4 executors. One was in New York, one in Perth, one in Melbourne, one in Brisbane. You know, it was impossible. So I think the right executor is absolutely important.
How do you choose the right executor in your experience, Noel?
Well, first thing I'd say, if someone asks you to be one, the answer is no. It's onerous and you can be sued for negligence, extremely low. I think you've got to have the sort of person who can stand in your stead if you're dead. Now, it's okay if you've only got a house and some super, but if you've got property assets like shops and properties, you need somebody extremely savvy.
And is it better to, let's say you have a couple of adult children, should they share this role, or is it better just to give one the whole role and hope that they are a good executor?
Yeah, I think it's better to give it to one with a backup, but as long as they know about it, because families can get angsty. And if you pick child 1 and don't pick child 2, there could be family fights. And don't forget also, it may not be the kids, it may be the kids' partners. And that's a major problem. The kids are fine, but gee, their partners are really difficult.
And we're taking your calls now on 1300 222 774 0437 774 774. Lisa Leong on the money, and I'm with Noel Whittaker, who's the author of new book Wills, Death and Taxes.
On the money.
19 past 10 on the money right now with Lisa Leong and Noel Whittaker, author of Wills, Death and Taxes, 19 past 10. And we are taking your calls on this. Noel, you mentioned about avoiding the death tax by potentially withdrawing all your superannuation before death. Jenny has texted in to say, well, withdrawing all the superannuation might result in the Centrelink pension being cancelled. Noel, what's your response to this?
Well, there's 2 things. That the moment you're of pensionable age, your super's counted. So it doesn't matter whether the money's in super or the money's in the bank. It counts. And what people don't understand is they say, oh, my pension drawings from the super are accessible. They are not. Centrelink deems your super as giving you an income. So switching money between spouses doesn't change things, and putting money from one asset to another doesn't change things at all.
And this,
but also, I think I've done some modelling. The main purpose of super is to save tax. A couple can have $1 million of assets outside super and still pay no tax. So you reach a stage, do I really need to be in super? Because there's fees and it's onerous and it can be delays, you know.
Good thinking. Now, this texter here, does the money from superannuation have to land in the bank account before death to avoid the tax? No?
No, the important thing is to give notice, but the notice must be received by the fund. And there's been a few decisions on this. It's a contentious issue, Lisa. It's better to be safe than sorry. I mean, hypothetically, once the fund has noticed, it's up to them to action it. This is particularly that there's a recent case with a self-managed fund that the deceased told the trustee that they wanted to get the money out, but then the trustee was slow asking the bank to get the money. It's much better to do it sooner rather than later. And I think once you get to 85, you must ask yourself, do I really need to be in super? Plus also, I'd rather give with a warm hand. I'd rather give, if I get to 85, I'd rather give my kids money so I can see them enjoy it.
No, they've got a really good recap here from Annie of Stratford. She says, can you just clarify the death tax scenario again, please, Noel, and the steps to take to avoid them and when to do them? So do you want to go through that again, Noel?
Yeah. Your super has a taxable component and possibly, but not always, a non-taxable component. The taxable component left to a non-dependent is taxed at 17%. Now, the way to do it is make sure there's no money in super after at your death. You don't want any money in super. It's fine going to your partner. That's fine. But once you're on your own, then that's the problem area.
And Noel, just to clarify that when you talk about non-dependence,
Yes.
so this means that an adult child would incur a death tax.
Lisa, it's a matter of fact. I mean, if I've got a disabled child, totally dependent, that child is a dependent. But if I'm paying the grandkids' school fees, the tax officer's held, that's not a dependent. So it's a question, they've got to be dependent on you. You can't just be helping your kids with their mortgage repayments.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying, Noel, and I hope that helps you, Annie. Let's go to some calls now on 1300 222 774. We are talking about wills, death and taxes. In particular, we started talking about the death tax. Joy is here on 1300 222 774. Hi, Joy.
Hi. I was wondering if there's a time limit to fix up affairs when a person dies.
Well, if I can give you the first thing, don't rush. I've heard so often, my husband died, I rushed down and told the bank and they froze our bank accounts and we couldn't pay for his funeral. You know, most families, they live on the husband's super and a part pension. This woman rushed and told the fund that the husband had died. They stopped the superannuation pension immediately. It took 9 months to restore it.
Right.
So obviously you've got to get things done in a timely manner, but don't rush.
Right. What is a timely manner? Somebody told me it was 2 years, and it's already that time, and I haven't even seen the will yet. And
oh my heavens, I'd be worried. But when I think of 2 years, that's the time you've got to sell the family home tax-free. So if you leave your family home to your kids, they've got 2 years to sell it exempt from capital gains tax.
I see. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well...
The first thing, have you got an executor? That's the first question. Is there an executor?
The executor, I think, is our daughter. I haven't seen the will, as I say. I've asked for it a few times, but for some reason...
It's a red flag. It's a red flag. So what sort of assets are there? What sort of assets are there?
Well, there's a small farm
Yeah.
and a house.
Yeah.
And I guess a few other things,
Yes,
machinery and so forth. But I really wanted to sort it out. And can...
You need a serious talk.
Yes. Well, I tried a solicitor, but the solicitor didn't even listen to me, sort of thing, and I got nowhere.
So, worry.
Yeah, it is.
I would go and confront your daughter, truly.
Well, yes. And how long is it that I can take to sort it out? Because it's going to take a while.
I don't
Noel,
think
do you want to go through the steps here for Joy? What do you think the general steps are for Joy to do next?
Okay, I'll go to a new solicitor and demand a copy of the will. How do you know you're a beneficiary?
And have a good conversation with her daughter, it sounds like.
Absolutely, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And change lawyers.
Those two things.
Also,
so,
I'd like
Joy,
to
good
say,
luck
Lisa,
with that.
that I'm in the Melbourne Age every Wednesday answering questions as well. So there's another resource.
Thank you, Joy, for your call, and good luck with those first two steps, which is the lawyer and having that conversation with your daughter. Let's go now to Shannon, who's been waiting patiently. Hello, Shannon.
Hi, Shannon.
How are you going? Hello.
Good.
Thanks for taking my call. I wonder if I've actually heard some of the answers in the last one, but my father passed away in April. We had a complicated relationship over the years. His wife said to us that everything went to her, walked away from the funeral and essentially said, keep in touch. We've still got good relationships, but she hasn't lodged probate, hasn't got any visibility of the will at all. And I, again, want to just get a copy of that will, and I just can't seem to track it down through her. Is there any other avenues I can seek a copy of that?
Well, I would certainly. What you need, Shannon's legal advice. I mean, the first thing is, if you want to contest the will, you must be eligible, and from what you've told me, you're eligible to contest it, and you've got to get things in motion. Absolutely. Yeah. The thing is don't leave it too late. The longer things drag on, there's all sorts of things can happen.
Yeah, okay.
Again, I'd go and talk to her. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I mean, she doesn't really like the big serious conversations, and I sent a handwritten letter, as you do, to the older folks, and saying, asking some questions about how I was seen in his eyes and things like that. And she didn't answer them at all. She ended up just sending a Father's Day card with $1,000 check in it saying, this is a gift from your dad. So it's I take it as a nice gesture, but also is that hush money. So
I think that might be
politely.
Yeah, but I think that might be evidence that you've got a claim, to be honest.
Yeah,
it's an admittance of some claim, absolutely. But you need legal advice, mate. All right.
Yeah, thank you. I'll try and see someone down in Melbourne or in South Australia.
Well, where you are. So you're in Melbourne and he's in, and she's in South Australia.
Correct. Yeah, in country South Australia, down in Victor Harbour.
And what's the assets?
I'm not sure about his assets. I don't really want to target her first marriage assets. Beautiful beach house on the beach down there. But yeah, I would just look to I want to see a copy of the will to see if he left me anything.
Yeah, but also bear in mind, if a property is in joint tenants, it's outside the will. I mean, if the property was in his name as joint tenants with her, it's outside the will anyway.
And you probably just need to find out which law applies to that will as well. Good luck getting a lawyer there. Thank you, Shannon. I've got one from Pam who has texted through Noel to say, is it advisable for our 21-year-old son to get a will? He's a uni student, owns a car, has a small amount of savings. Thank you. Ask Pam.
And he's probably got work superannuation as well.
Yes, probably. So what would you say? What's your advice, Noel, generally with wills? I think I know what you're going to say.
Just very simple wills. I mean, every time I walk down High Street, there's heaps of signs up, $400 wills and stuff. Yeah, all he wants is a cheap will. But it's good to have it.
Good work. And Carol asks, thanks for this interview, Noel. At what age can you withdraw all of your super?
Preservation age is 60, but you must have retired from a job. Between 60 and 65, you must have left a job. It need not be your main job. Once you get to 65, it's automatic.
Great. And this one, my sibling died without a will, no partner or children, but there are 4 surviving siblings of immediate family not dependent. The super is held in trust in the estate as we work through finalising it. When the estate is distributed, will the super component be taxed?
Well, yes, it will. I mean, if they're non-dependents, well, it's bound to be taxable. There may be some non-taxable, probably not. If it's left to 4 non-dependents, yes. And I've got a friend who was a senior tax officer, very senior, and he's at the moment acting as executor for 20 scattered executors. And because the deceased hadn't filed a tax return for 8 years,
oh dear,
my friend spent 4 hours on the phone to get a tax file number for him. He was a senior tax office employee, so there you are.
That's how many executors does it take to
Oh, tell me about
Administer a will. Too many, that one.
Beneficiaries. No, there were 20 beneficiaries, and he was the executor.
Beneficiaries, I see. I thought there were 20 executors. I was thinking that's a bit overcooking it, isn't it? Well, thank you so much, Noel, and congratulations on your book, Wills, Death and Taxes. So much there. We'd love to have you back on the show for On the Money one day in the future.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It's been great fun.
Noel Whittaker there, author of Wills, Death and Taxes.